And perfect. I will hand it over to Britt.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. As Sharon said, my name is Britt. I'm the Principal Planner for Land Use Strategy with the Department of Metropolitan Development. And I also have Carmen here with me. So we're going to tell you all about long-range planning and what we do. So just to give you a brief agenda. First of all, can everybody see my slides? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can? Okay, cool. So we'll start off by getting you started with a brief activity. We like to keep things engaging, so please participate via chat. I'll try to keep an eye out for the chat when we do the activity. Sharon, if you can help us with that too. And then we'll give you an overview of the comprehensive plan for Indianapolis and Marion County, then explain how the Marion County Land Use Plan helps guide development, and then share some ways we involve the community in city planning. So I am going to show you a series of aerial views of neighborhoods, and I would love if you could answer these 4 questions about each one of these aerial images. What do you think people do there? How do people get around? How comfortable would you be walking, driving a car, driving a semi-truck, biking, or taking public transit in those communities, and why? And can you tell which roads are busier and how? So I'll remind you of those questions, throughout. All right, so let's get started. So this is the first aerial image.
Recording in progress.
So I'm checking out the chat. So what do you think people do here? How do they get around us? Okay, someone said they shop. Okay. I'll give you a hint. So there are roads here. Working logistics, okay? Drive cars, gotcha. Warehouses, business parks. I see you folks are checking out the large buildings. Someone said drive cars. What else about the roads are you noticing? Or the vehicles even? What vehicles do you see here? 18-wheelers, trucks, a sea of semis. Yes, for sure. All right. So yeah, people are mainly driving here, probably because there's huge roads and there's a bunch of semis. I would say in general, people kind of work here, right? All right, let's go to the next slide or the next aerial. All right, same question. What do you think people do here? How are they getting around? Tawana said they live here. I agree, there's a lot of houses. What else? What else are you noticing about this aerial? Neighborhood with cars, bikes, and pedestrians. For sure, residential, transit. Yeah, we don't have very large roads. There's like 2 large roads, mainly for cars, right? And then other roads you might not even be able to see because of they're lined with trees. That means they're mainly catering to neighbors in the communities. It's dense, single family. Yeah, you guys are on it. We must have some planners or planners adjacent on the call. Great, so mainly people live here, various modes of transportation. I don't know if anybody, do you think they're doing anything else than living here? Okay, someone said few churches, large building on the edges. Yeah, so there's some other things in there, schools perhaps. If you look down in the right-hand corner, I think that might be a school or a church. There's also a couple other buildings, but yeah, so a lot of different things happening in this neighborhood compared to the first one. All right, so Next neighborhood. This one might throw you for a little bit of a loop. What are you seeing here? What do you think folks are doing here? How are they getting around? Mixed use? Okay, yeah, we could definitely have some planners on the call. Yeah. Mixed use. So when we say mixed use, there's like a combination of things happening. So the first one, folks primarily worked. The second one, folks primarily live. So now we're kind of seeing a mix of those. Someone said it looks like Hamilton County. It is not. It's not even in the state of Indiana, but I'm not going to give that away yet. Yeah, so over to the bottom corner, you can kind of see some single family homes. If you look in the middle of this aerial, it looks like it could be some apartment buildings, maybe some townhomes along this like mixed use street, a lot of trees. Robin said condos, live work areas, large campus. Yeah, over there to the left, maybe that could be a campus. That could be maybe a university. Yeah, so great job on this activity. Also, we're hiring at DMD for those planner adjacents on the call. I'm just kidding. Anyway, yeah, so basically that activity was to get you thinking about what we have to think about when it comes to how cities are built. So if you take a look around, everything that you see is shaped by city planning. So the streets, the buildings, the spaces in between them, virtually everything you see has been designed and shaped by city planning. Planners help determine where buildings can be constructed and what types of infrastructure is needed. And first, let me briefly describe our role in city planning. So me and Carmen are part of the long range planning division. So our work is very aspirational, very future focused. We're responsible for managing the comprehensive plan for Indianapolis and Marion County. The comprehensive plan is a policy framework to help make development decisions in a coordinated and overall beneficial way for the community. So here's a cute graphic that helps you visualize the comprehensive plan. So when we say plan, folks tend to think of like this one document, but in Marion County, it's a series of documents, kind of like gears on this diagram. So we have 7 different elements, from vision and values, transportation, resiliency, housing, parks, specific area plans, and land use. And those come together to inform policy making in Indianapolis and Marion County. You can also think of the comprehensive plan as kind of like chapters to a book. I love analogies, and I think this is even more helpful analogy because they are documents. So each plan is an actual document, but they come together to form the book of the comprehensive plan for Indianapolis and Marion County. And here's another visual for you. So these are actual covers for each one of the planning documents. So let's get into one of the plans. So let's take a moment to review the Marion County Land Use Plan and how we use it to guide decision-making. The Land Use Plan serves as a policy guide for anyone who wants to make decisions about land and development, including property owners, developers, neighbors, neighborhood organizations, grant writers, and city boards and commissioners. So pretty much anybody. The county land use plan consists of 2 components. the pattern book, and the land use map. The pattern book provides a classification system for neighborhood types. The neighborhood types fall into 3 categories: living, which are primarily residential; working, which are primarily non-residential; and mixed use, which have a balance of both residential and non-residential. Here's an overview of the neighborhood types for each one of those categories. The pattern book describes recommended land uses for each and conditions for each of those uses. So I'm gonna refer back to the activity that we did a few minutes ago to help you better understand what that means. So this is the first neighborhood that we looked at, neighborhood A. Imagine that this is your vision for a specific area of Marion County. This is an industrial area where people mainly work. Industrial areas tend to get a bad rap, in my opinion. This is due because of bad planning. Industrial and manufacturing are important parts of our lives. They generate jobs and products and services that we use every day. However, they also create emissions of odor, light, noise, and result in heavy traffic. So it's really important to have land use policy to guide industrial development. All right, so let's take a look at the policies outlined in the pattern book. So here are some excerpts from the heavy industrial neighborhood description. This typology is characterized by freestanding buildings or groups of buildings. This typically includes food processing, milling, storage of petroleum products, recycling, welding, and concrete mixing. Also, industrial or truck traffic should be separated from local and residential traffic. Here are the recommended land uses in that type of neighborhood: light industrial, heavy commercial, small scale offices, retailing, personal or professional services, wind or solar farms. That's it. That the pattern book outlines specific conditions for each one of those uses. For example, light industrial uses like manufacturing are recommended, but the industrial traffic should not utilize local or residential streets. Streets internal to the industrial development must feed onto arterial streets. So those are basically the larger streets that can handle semi-traffic. Also, it is removed as a recommended use where they would be adjacent to living or mixed-use neighborhoods. So let's take a look at neighborhood B. So in contrast, neighborhood B is primarily residential. Let's see what the pattern book would say for development for a neighborhood like this. This would be described as a traditional neighborhood, which includes a full spectrum of housing types ranging from single family homes to large scale multi-family housing. The development form should promote social connectivity, the social connectivity of the neighborhood, and a wide range of neighborhood serving businesses, institutions, and amenities should be present. Here's the list of recommended land uses for a traditional neighborhood. I'm not going to read all of them, but in general, the uses reflect the needs of a thriving community of this scale, meaning these type of roads and perhaps even the historical nature of the community. These uses also have conditions. For example, small scale schools should be located along arterial or collector streets and should not be within 1,000 feet of a highway or freeway. Also, one side note, I didn't put this in this presentation, but each one of these conditions has a rationale attached to them. So for instance, schools shouldn't be within 1,000 feet of a highway because of children being vulnerable to air pollution and that sort of thing. And then they should be located on busier roads. Let's say an example of an arterial street would be like 38th Street or something like that, because of the traffic that the schools generate. So pickup days and then also school buses, just think of those. So I explained one component of the land use plan, the pattern book. The second component is the land use map, which applies those classifications to geographical areas of Indianapolis and Marion County. So here's a visual for you. These are the various neighborhood types and how they are color coded on the land use map. So you can literally look up your community on the land use map, see what the neighborhood type is, and then see what the conditions are for the uses that you may be thinking about, a developer is proposing. Yeah. So that's pretty much a summary of the Marion County Land Use Plan, how it works and guides development. To access the land use plan and the other elements of the comprehensive plan, you can visit indy.gov and search the comprehensive plan, take a dive into those. Community engagement is really important for the Department of Metropolitan Development, especially the Division of Planning when it comes to thinking about the future of our community. We definitely want it to be guided by you all and our neighbors. The first way we do that is by updates to the comprehensive plan. Community engagement is central to that process. We want to hear your feedback about what your visions are for your community. This also includes data collections, what are emerging trends and that sort of thing. But yeah, this is a great way for you to be involved in that process. The comprehensive plan has to be updated periodically because the world changes. You know, we want to keep it as relevant as possible. We have a couple of RFQs out to select a consultant to help us with some updates to the comprehensive plan. So within the next couple of years, you all, because you're on this call, will be a part of that update process, and we'll keep you updated about how that goes. And there'll be press releases and all that good stuff. Another way that we engage the community is through education. So that activity that we went through is kind of a version of an activity that we did for People's Planning Academy, which is a free training we offer to the public to ensure that people are meaningfully involved in planning processes. So my personal philosophy as a planner is like, we should, like when you go to the doctor's office and you have to make an important decision about your body, there's a philosophy of informed consent. So you have to be educated and informed about whatever the surgery or treatment or whatever is when it involves your body. We should be doing the same thing about our communities. When comprehensive plans are updated or we need to make decisions about development, the community should have a foundational knowledge of what planning is, how it works in Indianapolis and Marion County, so they can participate in the process. So that's the goal of People's Planning Academy, and also for representation in participation in planning processes to be representative of the community. Unfortunately, that hasn't always been the case. And this is our way of making sure that as many people as possible understand what planning is and what are the avenues for involvement. One great outcome of the 2021 training was a series of educational videos about city planning and related topics. Those videos are now available on the DMD Communications YouTube page. They range from what we're talking about right now, the comprehensive plan and zoning, to the history of affordable housing development. And yeah, so I encourage you all to check those out. Oh, that graphic isn't showing up, but that's fine. There's two. So there's also the certified plan process. So certified plans are neighborhood plans prepared by community groups. They're intended to supplement the comprehensive plan by describing the unique goals and aspirations of a specific community. So a comprehensive plan is really looking at the county in general, and it doesn't talk about like, hey, this is the unique history of this neighborhood. This is a unique need that this particular neighborhood needs. So that's the kind of gap that the certified plan hopes to fill. So that's pretty much long-range planning. And I just wanted to make some quick distinctions between planning versus zoning. So the plans, the comprehensive plan, the different elements, so the Marion County land use plans, those are guidelines. They don't change anything. They don't change the existing land use. It's a vision for the future. So when important decisions need to be made, you can refer back to this and say, like, hey, this is our vision for 20 years into the future. Is this going to align with that? Before I turn it over to Keith, Carmen, do you have anything you want to add?
I really don't. You did such a beautiful job.
Thanks. Well, that's all I have. And I'll turn it over to Keith, if I can.
All right, just a second. I'll bring up my slides. And there we go. All right. There we go. Okay, so my name is Keith Holdsworth. I'm a senior planner in the current planning section. And current planning is code for people who do rezonings, variances, and other types of land use petitions. So whereas long-range planning, they're looking out into the distance. In current planning, we're dealing with the here and now. We have to think about the decisions we make right now, how they will affect the future, but we are reacting to requests that come in for development that's happening right now or wants to happen right now. So we'll talk a little bit about zoning, in that every parcel of land in Marion County is assigned a zoning district. So whatever piece of property you own or think about owning, it has a zoning district. And You see a little bit of a zoning map here to the right. And this is actually Irvington. And you can see the commercial area that's zone C4. There's a church that's zoned SU1. And then you see the single family homes that are zoned D5. And whenever you look at a zoning map, if you see in Marion County, you see a D, that's dwelling. You see a C, that's commercial. If you see a SU, that's a special use. You've got the SU1 for the church, you got SU37 for the library. But zoning tells you basically two things. It tells you what can be built there by right, what you have a right to build there. So that's the land use. It also tells you how that thing can be built, and that's the development standards. And so we'll explore that a little bit, but zoning is always a two-part animal. It's the land use and it's the development standards, what you can build and how you can build it. So we do zoning. The city invests a lot of time and effort into zoning. We have an 18-person staff. That's quite an investment in zoning. And so we've got to have some pretty good reasons for wanting to do that. And it's to provide for orderly development so that you don't have necessarily a factory being built 30 feet from a person's house. The house I lived in for many years until recently was across the street from a condo building, but that condo building had started life as a livery stable and then became a laundry. And you wouldn't be able to do that today under zoning, because that livery stable, a big stable where you could go and rent horses for the day, was built back in the 1800s. And imagine what that would have been like back in the 1800s to live across from, particularly like say in August, that you were living across the street from where all the horses were. And of course you had no air conditioning, so your windows had to be open. And so maybe your property values would go down, or at least it would be harder to sell your house in August maybe than it would be to sell it in February. So orderly development is very important. Zoning also implements the comprehensive land use plan, which is a portion of the comprehensive plan, as Britt was just telling us. So it's how just incrementally, land use decision by land use decision, that we can implement that plan. It provides for housing and transportation options. There's a lot of different types of housing that have their particular districts within the zoning code. It's meant to protect property values, and it's meant to protect neighborhoods. When zoning first came into being about 100 years ago, the idea was that it was to stabilize neighborhoods and as such, protect the property values. We also use zoning to improve the city's global economic competitiveness. We want to have places that are zoned appropriately so that if a global company wants to come here, they got a place to go. We just recently in the news heard about how Elanco is going to build their headquarters here. And a piece of property is undergoing zoning right now to allow for that. Zoning reduces crime. Well, how does it do that? It's through those development standards. We want to make sure that people are not inadvertently building in a manner that provides unsafe places. We want people to feel safe and secure when they're in a public place. It enhances tree cover. We have requirements for landscaping. We also have what's called the heritage tree provisions, which is protection for certain types of trees over 18 inches in diameter. And finally, it provides for adequate, but hopefully not excessive parking. We need places to park our cars, but we don't need a lot of just gray asphalt baking in the sun with nobody parked on it. So the zoning, the land use part. So that's one of the two parts of zoning is the land use, what you can do there. And that's broken down into two parts, primary zoning and secondary zoning. So primary controls the land use and the development standards. Whatever your primary zoning is, tells you what the land use is, tells you what your development standards are. And the major types of primary zoning are dwelling, commercial, mixed use, industrial, the central business district, and then special uses. There's also secondary, which overlays and modifies the primary zoning. And we have secondary zoning districts for flood control. So if your piece of property is zoned for dwelling, but you're overlaid by a flood control district, then you have certain things that you need to do that other people that are not in the flood control district don't need to do. And primarily that means that you have to build your house up 2 feet above the base flood elevation so that you are not flooded out. We also have secondary zoning districts for well fields, which is the areas from which we draw our drinking water, for the regional center, which is our fancy way of saying downtown, airspace, which is around the airport, and then gravel, sand, and borrow, which is the big pits you see that sand and gravel are dug out of. And there are special regulations for those areas, mostly for the reclamation of those areas. Then there are development standards. So this is how you can develop your land use. And some of these are tied to the zoning district. For example, we have their minimum lot size, setbacks, building height, landscaping, and signs. If you are in a single family residential district, you're only allowed to build a house of a certain height, whereas in a district that allows for apartment towers, you can build much higher. And so there's a limit set on that. And we hear quite often from people that when a zoning case comes in, that they don't want what's being built next to them to be so much taller than their house that they feel like they're being looked down on, or that are casting shadows on their property. So we have all these development standards, and there are justifications and reasons for all of them. Then there are some development standards that are tied to a specific use. So it's not the zoning district, but that use that's within the district. And you can see some of the examples there, like a tavern has to be at least 100 feet from a church. Auto repair must be indoors. Liquor stores are not allowed to have a drive-through, so that we don't encourage drinking and driving. But although liquor stores aren't allowed to have a drive-through, other uses that are in that same zoning district, such as a fast food restaurant, is allowed to have a drive-through. So as I mentioned before, in current planning, we deal with zoning and variances, and those are the two main types of land use petitions that we see. There are some other types. There's approvals, modifications, special exceptions, plats, vacations. And by vacations, we don't mean getting to go to the coast in the summer. This is when you vacate a plat or vacate a street or an alley. It means that that right of way goes away and the property is divided among the two adjacent property owners. And there's also companion petitions, which sounds like petitions that are friends. And this is when somebody, say, needs both a rezoning and a variance. Instead of making them go through one process and then the other, we let them go through the same process together. So that the two requests that they're making do become friends in a way, because they go through the process together. So I'm going to talk mostly about rezonings and variances, since they're the most common ones. And if you're going to go through this process, it's a process. You fill out an application and you pay a fee, and then you have to provide notice. and mailed notice is supplied to the surrounding property owners. And that's 2 properties deep or 660 feet, whichever is less. Registered neighborhood organizations get notice. So if you are part of a neighborhood association and you want to find out about zonings in your area, make sure that you get registered so that you can get notice of zoning petitions as they come through. And the notice is also sent to the city county councilors that are affected by the rezoning. Now, there's other ways of notice. A legal ad is placed. I think that we probably keep the Indianapolis Star in publication because we place legal ads almost every week telling about the upcoming zoning and variance cases. You also see an orange public hearing sign on a property. And this lets you know that a public hearing is coming up for a land use petition. Now, that may be one of current planning's land use petitions, such as a rezoning or variance. It could also be one for the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission. They use the same signs that we do. And this is actually a picture of our old signs. Our new signs have a sticker on them that will give you the petition number. So then if you call in to get more information out or get more information about the orange sign that you saw, you can provide the case number and we can look that up for you a little quicker. Whoops. Rezonings. So you've made your application, you paid your fee, you've given notice, and it's time to go to the hearing. If you're doing a rezoning, it's a 3 hearing process. You go to a hearing examiner, which is a person that has been hired actually to hear every case, and she makes a recommendation. If there's anyone unhappy with the hearing examiner's recommendation, they may appeal that recommendation to the Metropolitan Development Commission. Metropolitan Development Commission are 9 appointed volunteer members. They are not paid to be there. They give their Wednesday afternoons twice a month up to hear these petitions, and they are appointed. 5 of them are appointed by the mayor and 4 are appointed by the city county council. And the cases that they hear, the cases that are appealed, and after they've heard the presentation, they vote and make their decision. Those decisions are certified to the city county council, and the city county council typically will affirm all the cases. But they do have the ability, if they so choose, to call down a case, which means that they think maybe the MDC got it wrong and they want to hear it themselves. So out of the roughly 150 zoning cases we hear a year, the city county council will probably just pick 2 or 3 of those that they decide they want to hear. So it's something that's available to them. They don't often choose to take up that ability. And then the zoning process usually will take 2 to 3 months. A variance process is a little shorter. It goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals. They make the decision, and those decisions are not appealed to the Metropolitan Development Commission. The Board of Zoning Appeals meets 3 times a month on Tuesday afternoons. And there's 15 people on the Board of Zoning Appeals, but they're broken down into 3 divisions of 5 appointed volunteer members each. And so Board 1 meets on the first Tuesday of the month, Board 2 meets on the second Tuesday, and I said board, I meant division. Division 3 meets on the 3rd Tuesday. And a variance petition usually takes 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how you hit the calendar and how if everything goes well. Whoops. So all these petitions come to a hearing, and the people that make the decisions at the hearing typically hear from 3 different parties. They hear from the petitioner, who comes in and says what they want to do and why they want to do it. And then the remonstrators, those people that are opposed to the petition, have their opportunity to explain why they're opposed to it and encourage the decision makers to vote to deny the petition. And then staff provides our professional opinion. We provide a lot of objective background, and then also our professional planning opinion on whether we believe the case should be approved or denied, or alternatively approved, but maybe with some conditions or commitments added to that. So I want to take some time now to talk about how neighbors and neighborhood associations can get involved in the process. So when you when you get your public notice telling you that there's going to be a hearing, these are how I recommend that you take part of the process. So you want to be informed, you want to communicate, you want to identify the issues, weigh the alternatives, and then appear at the hearing. So being informed, as I mentioned before, notices get sent out about the petition. So on that notice, you'll find the place and time of the hearing, a synopsis of the request, just a little short blurb. You will get the petitioner's contact information. So you will know who the person making the request is and how to get a hold of them. So you are encouraged to call them up or email them and ask for more information. You'll also be told who the planner is that's assigned to the petition. And that planner is another good source of information about what's going on. And the mayor's neighborhood advocate will be identified on the public notice and may be able to help you. And there's also some frequently asked questions, and they're frequently given answers on the notice as well. A good source of information just in general, but also for zoning, is MapIndy. And I've got the link up there. It's also maybe easiest to just Google MapIndy and go there. It's a series of 3 maps. The middle one is the zoning map, and it gives you all kinds of different information related to properties, to streets. And so if you're a map nerd like me, and planners are all map nerds, you could lose hours looking at MapIndy because it has a lot of really interesting information on it, some of which may be valuable to you as you think about a zoning or variance petition. The zoning code is online. Indianapolis has a service called municode.com that publishes our zoning code, actually the whole city code, online. And so if you go to municode.com, you want to click on library, a map of the United States will come up. So pick on Indiana, and then once you're in Indiana, pick on Indianapolis, Marion County. The zoning code, well, as I said, the whole city code is on Municode. The zoning code is chapters 740 through 744. It's about 650 pages. So you're probably not gonna sit down and read through it. But there is a table of contents that should be able to get you to where you need to go in that. And you can call or email the Division of Planning. We have what's called Planner on Call. And every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, there's a planner on call available from 8 until 5, where you can call or email or come in person, and that planner will try to answer your questions. On Wednesdays, we're only available in the afternoon because we have staff meeting in the morning. And you do see the email address there, planneroncall@indy.gov. I strongly urge you to do that, to use that. Once you're informed communicate. Communicate with the petitioner. You're given the petitioner's contact information. We, the planners, always encourage the petitioners to reach out to the neighbors and the neighborhood organizations. But if they don't reach out to you, you are encouraged to reach out to them with any of your questions or concerns. Communicate with staff. We can help you negotiate the process and provide you with information, and then communicate with your neighbors and your neighborhood organization so that you can sort of maybe flesh out your thoughts about what's coming up, or think about it more fully by having more people in on the conversation. The one group of people you may not communicate with, though, is the board or commission members. If you communicate with them ahead of time, they will tell you to please stop it, because they need to go into the hearing with their minds clear and in a place of impartiality. So you are not allowed to communicate with the board or commission members in advance of the hearing. So identify the issues. Don't panic when you get that notice, legal notice. Try to not be terribly emotional about it. You're going to be emotional about it because if it's in your backyard, you've got reason to be emotional about it. Work yourself through that and start thinking about the proposals in a logical manner. Think about what aspects of the proposal you like and what you don't like. What problems this proposal or petition might create, but also what problems might be solved. In a lot of cases, when a new development comes in, they may solve like a long-standing drainage problem because they're having to put in new drainage systems. So not every development is going to create problems. A lot of developments are going to solve problems. So think about it in both sides of that coin. And then weigh the alternatives. Are there ways to change the proposal that might eliminate or at least relieve some of the negative impacts? For one thing, like the C4 zoning. The C4 zoning allows a lot of things that people would like to have in their neighborhoods. The C4 zoning also allows gas stations and liquor stores that often people don't want in their neighborhoods. So maybe a way to lessen the impact of a C4 zoning is to ask the petitioner to commit to not allowing a liquor store or gas station in their particular C4 district. Or maybe asking for a modification of the site plan, such as maybe more landscaping or maybe turning the building in a different direction so it's not quite as close to someone's house. There is a lot of legitimate things you can ask for. The petitioner doesn't necessarily have to do the things you ask for, but it should be part of the conversation. And the board and commission members will be interested to know that negotiations have taken place and how those negotiations have gone. Modifications to the request can take the form of conditions or commitments, meaning they can be written right into the zoning decision, and then they run with the land. But make sure that the things you're asking about really address the request. And the example I give there is someone has come in for a reduction of setback, meaning they can put their building or their parking lot closer to the edge of their property and closer to the edge of your property than what the ordinance calls for. Well, that might be okay with you if they would just put in some additional landscaping, which would address the issue of location on a site. But restricting their hours doesn't necessarily say anything about them being a couple of feet closer to your property line. So make sure that your commitment is related to the requests that they're making. And then appear. Now, lots of people will write letters to the hearing examiner or the commission or the boards, and those are taken very seriously. And those are given to the commissioners and the board members in advance of the hearing so they can see them. And I encourage people to write letters. You can submit them to the planner, and the planner will make sure they get into the file and get to the board and commission members. But there is nothing like appearing in person. That appearance in person just makes a bigger impact. And so when you come to the board and commission, just so you kind of know what's going on, the hearing, the zoning part of the hearing will open with requests with special requests. So these are things like continuances or dismissals, or usually the most common one though is for continuances. And then the cases will be called. So the petitioner and anyone that wants to speak in favor of the petition get 15 minutes cumulatively to present the request. So not each one of them doesn't get 15 minutes. As a group, they get 15 minutes. Then the remonstrators get 15 minutes as a group to present their comments. And so if you are part of a group that's going to come down and speak against a petition, you might want to get a little bit organized ahead of time so that you each have your piece of that 15 minutes and somebody doesn't get left off at the end. After the petitioners and the remonstrators have spoken, city county councilors get to speak, and they get what the rules call a reasonable amount of time. So they are not limited to 15 minutes. They get a reasonable amount of time. And this is usually where I make a comment about what's reasonable to a city county councilor, may be different than what's reasonable to the rest of us, but that would be rude, so I won't say that. And then once city county councilors speak, if they care to, then staff presents its findings and recommendations. Then each side gets 5 minutes of rebuttal. Commissioners can kind of stop the proceedings and ask questions at any time. They usually will wait until someone finishes speaking before they ask questions. And the time that they spend asking questions and that you spend answering their questions typically does not get counted toward your 15 minutes of the original presentation or your 5 minutes of rebuttal. We try to make sure everyone gets their full amount of time. And then the vote is taken and the decision is announced. And so that's the process and what you can expect if you come to a hearing. That was a whole lot of something to be hit with all at once. So I suspect you will either be stunned into silence or you will have lots of questions, but now's the time to ask questions for me or for Britt or for Carmen. And I suppose we'll throw it over to Sharon to moderate us.
Yep, I would say, Jennifer, what question do you have?
So I really appreciate this presentation. I think more people need to be informed about this process. Keith probably knows that I've been involved in it and remonstrated on some projects. I'm also, full disclosure, a member of the Northside Community Council. And there have been a couple developments on the north side that have been approved downtown, even though the community, I want to go back to the long range planning comments. The community felt that it was not consistent with the comprehensive plan. There was remonstrance. It doesn't really seem to have much impact. It doesn't feel like the planners or anybody else is holding the developers accountable to the comprehensive plan, but it rests on the community to try and do that. And I just want to get your thoughts on that, because I feel like this has happened a couple of times, and I'm not sure how the community has more impact on this process.
I'll give my thoughts on it, but I think Carmen or Britt will probably have comments as well. So what you all don't see is what's happening behind the scenes. And there are many petitions that come in, or many people that call up and pitch things to us. And we will tell them that does not meet the comprehensive plan, and we don't think you should file that. And we head off a lot of petitions right at that point. So they're ones that you never even hear anything about because they never get applied for. Now, other people are not deterred by staff telling them to go away, it doesn't meet the comprehensive plan, and they file it anyway. Or maybe they don't even come and ask us first. That's also common because they know that we might tell them that we would rather they didn't file that particular petition. And so when staff gets together every Wednesday morning, we talk about every petition. And one of the things we talk about on most petitions is what the comprehensive plan has to say for that area. And so it is an important factor to us. Now, by state law, there are 5 factors that you have to take into account, and the comprehensive plan is one of them. But what the comprehensive plan says, as the earlier slide showed, is not the rule, it's a recommendation. And so there are many cases where staff is able to use the comprehensive plan to help us maybe get more out of the developer than we might have gotten otherwise. That's a very common thing. And the planners have a little bit different viewpoint than people from the neighborhood may have. We've seen a lot more cases come through, so we have more experience in that way, but we are not as personally invested in the area. So I'm not at all diminishing the neighborhood's take on a project. I will have to say that on nearly every project that comes in and someone remonstrates about, they will bring up traffic and say, this will increase traffic in my neighborhood to the breaking point. And after you've heard that literally 150 times in 1 year, you have to think, not every petition is going to make traffic unbearable. So there are certain things that staff can be a little bit more objective about maybe than the neighborhood can. But we do take the comprehensive plan very seriously. But if there is a case where the petitioner has convinced us that there is something about their plan that is worth setting aside the comprehensive plan recommendation for, we have the ability to do that and will do that.
Keith, I just wanted to add one more point. So oftentimes when we talk about, well, there's 2 things. So one, I think it's really important to acknowledge that those 3 entities that play a role in the hearing decision. But then also, we don't tend to talk about like the role that the public plays in like selecting, I guess like voting. So sometimes we separate voting from planning processes, but in actuality, your vote in the elections matter because the boards and commissioners are appointed positions. So for example, the Metropolitan Development Commission there's 9 people on the commission. 5 are appointed by the mayor and 4 are appointed by the city county council. So if you feel like the boards or commissions aren't representative, they're not like truly making decisions that you believe reflect your community, then you can voice your opinion through the election process. And then also the BZA, it's a little bit more, so the BZA, appointed position. One, there's, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 5 different divisions of the BZA. No,
3
sorry.
divisions with 5 members.
3 divisions with 5 members, and 1 is appointed by the Metropolitan Development Commission, 2 appointed by the mayor, and 2 appointed by the city county council. So that's just another perspective. When you're thinking about how decisions are made, that's another way that you can think about.
I know we need to move on, but I think the only other points I'd like to make is that to reiterate what Keith was talking about, the Wednesday morning meetings that we have. I mean, there's a comprehensive set of people in that meeting that really try to think about the proposed developments and petitions in a very, holistic way, coming at it from different perspectives. And so we do take the comprehensive plan very seriously. It's not something that we just, just are saying that it's there and we don't utilize it to the best of our abilities. And I think that the second thing I'd like to mention, Britt mentioned this during the presentation that they gave, and, especially in the past several years, areas of the city, and all cities are changing very rapidly. So it's very important that we get into the mindset of viewing our comprehensive plan as a live document and going into it and doing updates on a regular basis, which is what we're trying to do this year. So I would really encourage everyone on this call to be involved in those processes so that we can keep the pattern book and the typologies relevant for your neighborhoods.
Okay, perfect. So we have another question, another hand up, Rochella. Oh, we can't hear you. No, we still can't hear you. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This is my first rodeo, so bear with me. I had a question regarding this being more useful for neighborhood association. I'm with the Audubon Garden Neighborhood Association. And my question was how to actually look up anything that's going on in your neighborhood as far as zoning or permits.
So on the city's website, there is a area that you can go to that lists all the permits that are currently being going through the process, and zoning and variance cases that are going through the process. I will say, unfortunately, that site is not set up to tell you much more than there's something going on right now. It's something we need to get fixed. So as far as zoning or variance cases go, I would really recommend either emailing the planner on call@indy.gov or calling our office at 317-327-5155 and asking.
Okay, can you repeat that number for me one more time? I know.
Sure, it's 317-327-5155.
Yeah, because a person that came and knocked on doors and said that they were trying to rezone and we never got anything or heard anything. So I wanted to look into it, and, as you were saying and stuff like that, the information that you provided. So I wanted to try to get online. So that's what I'll do. I'll call that number and see if there's anything documented.
Yeah. Everybody a lot of time.
Appreciate it.
And just to reiterate what Keith brought up earlier, Sharon put it in the chat. Sharon, I was just about to do that. Making sure that your neighborhood organization is registered, so you automatically get those public notices. And making sure that information is up to date, because I know with neighborhood organizations, everybody's volunteering, there's a lot of turnover, so what sometimes happens with neighborhood groups is like the president got the email and they moved to Colorado and is not replying. So just making sure it's up to date.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I saw in the chat that Robin also has a question. Robin, if you want to elaborate on what you wrote on the question, what you had in support of that question.
Right. Having moved here from out of state, lived in another couple of cities, it's so shocking to me the amount of abandoned homes that are just spread around so many neighborhoods. I don't understand that process of how those properties can move along. And I don't know that you have any say or anything in the matter in some of the gentrification that's going on in different neighborhoods. If you have any, you may or may not be able to affect any of that as the zoning and variances.
Yes, I can, go ahead.
So I'll take a first stab at, so as far as the abandoned properties, I really don't have, maybe Britt or Keith will have something some information to pass along. I don't really know much about, that's not within the traditional current planning or long range planning duties. Although it's something that we certainly think about and gather data about when we are doing, when we are looking at the future of the city. But as far as in our division, we don't. There are other divisions that do work on affordable housing and I guess property acquisition, but we don't in our divisions. And then as far as the gentrification, it's sort of the same thing. We can address gentrification through thinking about where, again, through a future-oriented lens, we can think about where is the city growing, where is it not growing. We can look at things like sales prices, when houses have sold, like we can look at data to see, are they flipping? What were the prices before and after, to kind of get a big picture of where the city, again, is sort of growing or not growing, and how can we, as the planning divisions, work with other divisions in DMD to help, if we have funds to use for affordable housing and other economic development initiatives that other divisions in DMD are working on, we can help be like the long range, vision on how to help with that. And also, and maybe Britt will talk a little bit more about this, but thinking about housing typologies, we can help create more affordable units through different types of houses in a neighborhood. So thinking about having not only single family homes, but having the ability to have apartment buildings or condo type buildings or, duplexes, things like that. And that's where we also work with current planning to get data and see, what is the availability to help provide the opportunities for a variety of income levels and people of all ages to live in a neighborhood.
Yeah, I was also curious how something Educators Village that is apparently at 10th and Rural, this little area, I don't know how that came about. Is that just a part of the NEAR, or is that part of your Department of Metropolitan Development at all?
I believe, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I did not have anything to do with that. That was prior to my tenure here at DMD, but I believe that was an initiative started by the areas, like you said, NEAR, which is the Near East Side area redevelopment, I think, but the CDC or the local neighborhood organization that helps with development in the area. I believe that was an initiative that was actually started by them, and perhaps I think that the city also put some funding in it through our probably home investment partnership programs or community development block grants, or our community incentives. Those are federal funds, I believe. And like I said, I may be misspeaking on the funding source because I don't know a lot about it, but you know, there are times when we do partner with city or with other entities in order to address some of these systemic issues throughout the community. And I guess I should also say too, and I know that we have other questions, but you know, we do partner engagement is very important to us. So we have been building relationships with community members throughout the city when we know that there are you know, these issues that are popping up with affordability, gentrification, displacement, things like that. And we are listening to them and working with them and coming up with solutions on, you know, how to help that those issues in neighborhoods.
I'll also say that if you have problems with specific abandoned houses in your neighborhood, if the foundations are falling in or the roofs are coming in, the Marion County Health Department is the enforcement agency for unsafe buildings, and you can turn in those buildings. Now, that's not necessarily a quick process to have to force those to either be fixed up or be torn down. We are somewhat hampered by what the state allows us to do. This is, you know, a strong property rights state. And we're also somewhat hampered by the amount of budget that is given to that. But if there are particular houses that are falling down on your street, get them turned in. It will probably take several months before anything happens, but if you don't turn them in, nothing will happen.
Where would I turn them in? The burned out house that's
I would
got no roof left?
I would go to Request Indy.
And I just wanted to add, so we do have an element of our comprehensive plan that refers to housing. The neighborhood investment strategy just is exactly what it sounds like. It provides a policy framework to help guide housing. I can drop that in the chat for you to take a look at. And then also I want to give a shout out to our other divisions within DMD who are doing really good work. So Keith alluded to state preemption, which means that the way policy works in Indiana, if the state makes a rule about something, then like the state's rules come first. So we have a lot of discussions about affordable housing, and some municipalities have options like inclusionary zoning. So for instance, whenever a developer constructs a multifamily development, they have to set aside like 18% of the units to be affordable or low income or whatever it's in, whatever in the code. But because of state legislation, we don't have that. That's against our state requirement. So that's we are limited to through state legislation, but I really commend our community investments division because they're finding creative ways to incentivize affordable housing. So we changed like to get city incentives for affordable housing projects. They've increased the threshold. So Carmen, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I think it used to be like 80% AMI was a threshold, but now we're thinking about like folks who are really struggling. And so I think it's been increased to like the threshold of like 50% area median income. Sorry, I'm using I hate to be that person that's always using acronyms, but yeah, basically thinking about folks who are like hardest hit by the economy and poverty and that sort of thing. So.
I'm not sure what the I'm not sure. Was her name Robin? Was that Robin?
Yes.
I don't know if she's part of a neighborhood association, but if she is, they have more information with direct contact for the health department. I mean, yeah, Marion County Health to report abandoned buildings and those concerns. So I don't know where she's located at, but they just started giving information to the different neighborhood associations with direct contact with, I believe her name is Deborah Webster, that will, she's a community liaison for specific issues regarding the health department.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Keith and Britt and Carmen. Thank you.
So we have time for maybe one more question. I do want to note a couple of things as people may start to head out. Our next session is with the health department, so that was perfect timing for me to let you know that the health department will be meeting with us next month, and we'll be talking about a few different things. On the list, let me double check so I can make sure that I say correctly. We're going to talk about walkability assessments, green spaces, and community land trust. And then the last one will be with the mayor's neighborhood action, which is what we just talked about as well. So I wanted to make sure to list those will be our next two info sessions. I also have a survey I'm going to put in the chat. It's a very quick survey. It just lets us know if this was helpful, and then also what other info sessions or educational topics are you interested in. And like I said, we do have, it's 7:26. If there's one last question that anyone has that we can do as our wrap-up question.
I dropped a link to PPA, People's Planning Academy educational videos. In case anyone's specifically, we've talked about affordable housing and like housing issues. Our former colleague, Andrea Miller, made a phenomenal video that provides a detailed overview of the history of affordable housing in America, but then specifically in Indianapolis. That would be really great to check out. In addition to, there's other videos about comp plan, zoning and stuff, but I encourage you to check those out to take a deeper dive and kind of get started.
Perfect. I do have one question since no one else jumped in. I hear often about neighborhoods, neighborhood associations wanting to have speed bumps in their neighborhood or some sort of way to slow cars down that drive through a residential neighborhood. And I've heard that they've been told they can't do it. And so I wasn't sure, is there any information I could share when I hear this?
So that is the Department of Public Works, and the person at DPW that you would want to talk to is a gentleman by the name of Nathan Sheets. But what he will probably tell you is the thing with speed bumps is that when someone slows down for a speed bump, they compensate by speeding up between there and the next speed bump. So it may not be as good as you think it might be.
Okay, but it might be something that's possible if the neighbors do want it.
They are interested in traffic calming in neighborhoods. There's probably better ways to do it though than speed
Than a
humps.
speed bump. Okay, but that's DPW Nathan Sheets.
Yes.
I was gonna say, it sounds like you all need a education session with DPW. Also, I'm gonna put something else in the chat. So we do have a transportation element in our comprehensive plan, and it includes an overview of capital projects. And this is the transportation plan, which is called Indy Moves, is something we've worked in collaboration with the Department of Public Works and some other city partners. So you can dive into that to get an understanding of our transportation philosophy, capital projects, and one thing we have in there is our commitment to Mission Zero, which is, let's not have people die. Can we at the very least, like, let that be the goal in Indianapolis? No one dies from pedestrian automobile crashes. So anyway, so that's in the chat now.
Thank you for sharing that as well, Britt. Well, I appreciate you all. I realize my computer has a different time than my cell phone, so it is technically 7:27. My computer tells me it's 7:29. And yeah, thanks, Logan. Come next month. Health by Design is supporting Marion County Health Department with our walkability. And so this is exactly in line with what was talked about just now. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Make sure to get something to eat.